The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar by solutionXchg on retention management and compliant storage management. We are happy you could attend and hope you will find the presentation interesting. My name is Jochen Hager and I will be your host throughout the session. Upfront, a few administrative items. Our presentation today will take about 20 minutes with 5 minutes reserved for questions at the end. A few procedural and technical notes on this. All participants are on mute during the full duration of the webinar. Please post any questions or concerns through the questions function in your administration panel on the right side of your screen. If you cannot hear us or cannot see the presentation, please also alert us through the questions panel. We will send out a transcript to those who are interested after the webinar. Please let us know via email to info@solutionexchg.com. That's info@solutionxchg.com. Let's dive right into the topic. Our presenter and speaker today is my business partner and compliance specialist, Kristen Gerling. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making the time today for our webinar. We will be talking today about a more infrastructure-specific topic in the SAP archiving arena, and that is about write once, read many, compliant storage management and retention management behind the document management system layer. What I would like to share with you today in today's webinar is that you get an understanding for warm compliant storage for SAP in the past world, in the ECC6 past and current, as well as for HANA, and then I will highlight a couple legal requirements that are out there that require you to actually store your data in a warm compliant storage solution. We'll talk a little bit about our product's architecture that we showcase today, the actual archiving process with it, and some very beneficial features, and then we'll summarize the benefits, and we'll turn it over to some questions after that. So let's start right away. Talking about warm compliant storage for SAP. I mean, in the SAP ERP world, you probably are familiar with doing data archiving and handling documents, scanned documents, or your output that you're generating through some of the more on the logistic sides on the modules, like purchase orders or billing documents, and how they are flowing from SAP through the Archive Link interface to an Archive Link certified DMS solution. And I've listed a couple of the main players here in the market. They're like OpenText, FileNet, Documentum, KGS, a solution that solutionXchg resells as well, Saperion, PBS ContentLink, and also the SAP ContentServer in its file system version. So all these documents and data can be stored via the Archive Link interface from your ERP system to the DMS, and then the DMS in most cases will have a warm compliant storage sitting behind it where the actual files are being stored. And the files then are stored write once, read many, so you can save them once, but you can't make changes. And ideally, you want to also pass on a retention date that this document management system applies to the files and also keeps in its database. You want to apply that to the file on the warm storage so that the storage itself can protect any accidental deletions of that file until that retention date has passed. In the current or for most customers today that have not moved to S/4HANA yet, this is handled the same way for data archiving as well as documents. With S/4HANA, obviously for data archiving or data aging, you have different mechanisms that are not necessarily requiring an ArchiveLink certified solution at the back end, but it is really just for the data archiving part or aging part that you have that feature. For any documents, scanned images, or images that you create as output from SAP, the same flow is still valid that you have in the EC6 environment today. So write once, read many, like I said, is a requirement coming from various different legal requirements. The iTernity iCAS software, the software we're highlighting today, is actually a KPMG certified solution for tamper-proof long-term archiving, which is the write once, read many piece, and then also for GDPR compliance. I don't know if many of you have really researched GDPR extensively, but if you have subsidiaries in Europe that have employees, if you have a large customer base in Europe, and you are capturing personal information or payment information from these customers, then you fall automatically under the GDPR compliance program, and you will have to make sure that you are storing this kind of data safely. Another big requirement, and very much so for especially U.S. financial institutions, is SEC. The SEC Rule 17A-4, which requires anybody within the financial trading industry to store the documents write once, read many compliant, but also they have very, very high requirements as far as the duplication and synchronization of the data. So companies that want to be SEC 17A-4 compliant need to always store the data onto two different storage targets that are different sites, and they need to be able to switch over in a second. There cannot be any downtime for this. So that is the SEC rule is the strongest regulation out there, and our product that we're showcasing today, iTernity iCAS, actually meets this compliance criteria as well. In general, what these rules always have in common is that data must be immutable and tamper-proof, so you can't make any changes to it once it's been stored. It needs to be kept in its original version and cannot be altered. It cannot be deleted, and the data must be encrypted and kept for a specific time period, which is the retention. So if your DMS system, if your OpenText or KGS system passes on a retention date to the storage layer, then that retention date is binding, and the data cannot be deleted physically from that storage system until that retention date has been matched. Data must be able to be migrated to future storage media. When we're talking long-term archiving, think about, for example, HR records that need to be kept 30 years past an employee having retired or having left the company. That is a long time, and your storage technology evolves during that time. It changes. So you need to be able to migrate to future storage media at any given time when you want to modernize your platforms as a backend. Also, it also must be always accessible. So you can't have long downtimes while you're searching for a record. It should be coming up at your fingertips when you're trying to retrieve a document. In the past, we've had a lot of various different hardware-centric storage options that kind of fulfill these requirements. Here on the left side of the screen are listed some of the more dominant in the market, like EMC Centera, Hitachi HCAP, NetApp SnapLock, or the IBM DR550. As you see, EMC Centera has a discontinued sign behind it. EMC Centera, or EMC, announced at in March, I believe, this year, that they are at the end of sale for the Centera. So customers that do have this type of equipment must start thinking of moving on to a different platform. The IBM DR550 has been discontinued for, I think, probably 2 years now. But these kind of hardware-centric solutions come with some disadvantages, and that is they're proprietary solutions. So you have a vendor lock-in or a hardware lock-in. You can't switch out the storage underneath them easily. They are they require time and cost-intensive migrations to other platforms because of their proprietary state. And relicensing of the archive needs to happen with every hardware life cycle. So that because there are hardware and software combined in a device, when that hardware becomes end of life, you basically have to buy a whole new suite again. In most cases, you will have to purchase in advance all the storage that you need, and you can't add it as you need it. So you're licensing for unused archive space, and most of these solutions are oversized for what customers actually use them for. And of course, they cause a high effort in operation and maintenance. Just because they're the odd one outs in your data center, for your administrators, there's a learning curve to operate them, and a lot of times they're not as intuitive as regular storage technologies that your administrators are familiar with. So there's a better way, and that is working with iTernity iCAS as a storage solution for storing your SAP data archiving files or your documents in SAP. Let me explain a little bit the architecture of this software-based solution. It is a middleware sitting between your business application data, business applications and the data there. For example, an enterprise content management system or your document management system. There are other use cases that are outside of the SAP scope, like in healthcare for radiology, cardiology, patient folder information, email archiving, video surveillance, and trade messaging recording, and others. These applications write to the iTernity layer, and the iTernity layer then turns around. The software layer then, with its services, turn around and store those files that are ingested in a write once, read many compliant method on the storage infrastructure. They can encrypt the files. There can be retention passed on to the file if the leading application can't provide that. And there is data integrity monitoring and self-healing. And I will go into those two topics a little later in the presentation. But these are add-on features that are just added by configuration. It's not an extra cost or anything, that allow the iTernity application to really secure the data and protect against silent bit corruption. So it is a software-defined solution approach for hardware, and there's no hardware dependency really. You can use any type of the common storage infrastructures like NAS, SAN, object storage, block storage, and cloud storage. It is easy and secure to migrate data going forward because the way the files are being stored on the storage infrastructure, they are immutable containers that contain all the information that is needed in order to rebuild the archive. So it's very easy to migrate, and we will be happy to help you there if you need. What actually happens during the archiving process? I already said that it is a middleware, so the business application actually writes the data to an iTernity file share, which is a virtual file system. And that triggers the file being closed there, triggers the iTernity services then to create the self-contained content storage container and move that self-contained storage container onto the storage infrastructure. These CSCs, content storage containers, these are this is a patented format by iTernity, and they really contain all the information, not just the actual file itself, but also the metadata, so that makes it easy for them for migrations in the future to migrate those containers, because they're never going to lose their validity. Self-healing, as I mentioned earlier, self-healing is a very great feature of iTernity that prevents the risk of silent data corruption. If you're thinking about having having to hang on to your data for many years, the likelihood of you going in, retrieving documents, and noticing that you can not retrieve a document just because the disk corrupted is very slim. I mean, you're not going through all your documents on a continuous basis, and therefore you might not detect a bit that has rotten in the time you need or the time you have until where you still have a valid backup of that data. So what iTernity offers is it can synchronize your data automatically through an additional write path. So it basically writes out the files twice before it reports back to the business application that it actually successfully archived the document. This leads to you having mirrored archives, and between those archives, iTernity can run integrity checks, and if it did, because all the files are stored with a hash value, it can detect if there is anything wrong with a file, if it has been compromised by any type of disk corruption or malintent, and it can alert you as an administrator immediately. But it also can if you have the self-healing switched on and you're writing the files out to 2 different locations, it can do a self-repair. So it can move or copy, not move, it can copy the intact file from storage B back over to storage A, where it might have detected a file being corrupted. So this gives you as a customer a very high level security and minimizes your risks tremendously by using this self-healing feature. I would like to share with you here just a couple of different applications. main takeaway from this slide really is not that we go through all these different vendors, but that you take note of the URL underneath. If you have an application and you're not sure if this might be certified, iTernity on its website lists all the different applications that are certified and that it can work with. Here's just so for your reference a couple of our reference customers. We did several great projects, for example, Mondelez, where we replaced an EMC Centera environment and moved the data to iTernity iCAS. Armstrong, for sealing, Armstrong sealing as well as Armstrong flooring is using iCAS in combination with their SAP archiving platform. In this case, it is KGS. Parmalat and Steel, for example, and Deloitte are using OpenText as their leading platform. Luxottica as well. There are very different combinations of DMS and then iTernity iCAS that we have worked with in the past. Novachem is another OpenText one, for example. And of course, different use cases, not just the SAP use case, but also others. But I wanted to highlight a few of the bigger SAP projects that we did for you. To summarize everything up about iTernity iCAS, it is a warm compliance solution that gives you the highest levels of security for your archive data. Like I said, you can use encryption, and the patented CSC technology allows you to easily migrate that data to future-proof storage solutions every time you need to upgrade your technology. You have extreme flexibility as far as what type of storage solution you run as on the back end, but also if you want to run iTernity iCAS as a virtual or a physical environment, so on a virtual server versus a physical server, there is no hardware lock-in. You're always going to be able, and you don't have to relicense the solution when you're upgrading your hardware in the backend. And efficiency, iCAS reduces your TCO for your archive. We have worked here not as solutionXchg, but iTernity and solutionXchg together in some cases. I mean, there are over 1,200 customers worldwide relying on iCAS and using it as a warm compliant solution to enforce retention on the file level worldwide. There have been studies by other hardware vendors, for example, SUSE, which you might know as an SAP operating system, also has an object storage platform, SUSE Cephs, and the combination between SUSE Cephs and iTernity lowers your TCO in comparison to an EMC Centera environment by 70%. So these are significant savings that you can achieve and efficiencies, and it's worthwhile looking at it with more in more detail. Please contact us if you are interested in exploring this, and we'll have Johan's and my contact information out later after the questions. A few words about solutionXchg. solutionXchg is a company that brings innovative European software products to the US market. So we look for products in the European market that are part of the SAP ecospace, have been successful in EMEA, but have not necessarily ventured out and incorporated in the US and are reselling or are selling their solutions themselves in the US. So this is how we became an iTernity iCAS agent in the US. We are also a premier KGS reseller. I mentioned KGS as one of the document management systems that also iTernity is certified with. And Jochen and myself and our team, we have a very, very strong SAP archiving and document management expertise. We've been doing this, all of us, for more than 20 years, and have done many different projects, from very large data archiving projects to very diverse document management implementations or other types of projects around document management. I myself, for example, have done I was involved for almost 3 years in a very large global business process outsourcing initiative, where part of the project was trying to find out how to electronically move a lot of the documents that are handled within an organization out to these different data processing centers globally. So please, contact us if you have any questions regarding data archiving, document management in SAP, or even the storage layer for that your archived documents. We would be happy to engage with you and find a very good solution, cost-effective and robust, that you can use. That brings me to the end of today's slideshow. We can open it up now for questions.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Thank you for the presentation. This concludes the presentation section of our webinar for today. We hope you enjoyed all the good information and got some interesting takeaways. We have a couple of questions here, which I would like to pose. First one is, why do I need a compliant archive solution for SAP?
Okay. Like I mentioned in the beginning of going through the slides with you, there are regulatory requirements. So you can have federal regulations that require you to actually store your data, your SAP relevant archive data, as well as the documents that you archive, in a write once, read many compliant solution. To list a few, there is obviously Basel, SOX compliance. They have sections in their regulations that apply to that. Certain state level regulations have that. I know the state of California has regulations about how to store electronic documents when you don't want to hang on to the paper original. And then there is, in the financial market, there's the SEC 17A-4 compliance. For the government, there is certain regulations about encryption of these documents. It's called FIPS, and there's a couple different, there's FIPS levels 1 to 4. So there can be a vast number of regulations, but it could also be your internal auditing department that requires you to, if you want to get rid of the paper original and you want to store an invoice, an incoming invoice, an accounts payable invoice as a electronic PDF file, that would require you to have this file stored on using warm technology.
Thank you. And another question, how complex is a standard installation of iTernity?
It's not complex at all. Normally, I mean, with a little bit of prep work that we send out a checklist on how the server or the virtual machine that iTernity is going to be installed on needs to be configured. Basically, I mean, it is a Windows system. It needs to have a certain .NET version on it, and an IFS version on it, and then it is more or less ready to go. The actual installation time for such a server ranges between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours. So we would schedule a screen sharing session with you and then install the solution. And then it can be connected to the DMS system, and you can start running tests for archiving on it.
Thank you. And last question, I think you already answered that on one of your early slides. Which archiving products can I combine iTernity iCAS with for SAP archiving?
Yeah. Let me just flip through and go back to that slide, because then it is available for everyone to see. Mainly the big market players obviously are OpenText, FileNet, Documentum, and then you have some more mid-range solutions, as not necessarily as far as customer size or anything, but as far as footprint in the market. Those are KGS, Saperion, PBS ContentLink. You have a lot of customers using the SAP ContentServer. Since iTernity works with unstructured data, it cannot work with the SAP ContentServer that is using the MaxDB. It can only work with a file system version.
Thank you. And that is the last question we had for today. Please feel free to contact us at any time at info@solutionXchg.com. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Kristen. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you and goodbye.